All right, well, if you're joining us, this is what we call Monday Night Live. And I am here with one of my dear friends, Jose Flores, who we hung out a little while ago and had a chit chat. And I really, really appreciated his perspective on life. And as we are now going through this whole world coronavirus kind of situation, we decided to open this up, not just to our private mastermind, but also to our Facebook friends, in hope that they could get a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of insight to how people cope with adversity, and probably nobody better than Jose to help us with that. So welcome to our coveted Monday Night Live, Jose.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm super excited to hang out with you and your crew.
Yeah, and I'm jazzed to have you here because I think it's very fitting for, the kind of conversation that you and I have around adversity. And for a lot of people, they don't know that every day you have to overcome obstacles that other people take for granted. And yet you do it with a smile on your face, and you do it with, a little bit of pizzazz, and you attack life, and you don't let anything kind of get you down. So I want to talk about some of the things that allow you to have that perspective. And you're a speaker and a successful trainer and author. And tell us a little bit about what your world is like today. Then we're going to go backwards instead.
So we're going to start from now and work our way backwards?
Yeah. What are you working on now? Who are you impacting now?
Yeah, so right now, I'm working on a couple different projects. Right now, my wife and I were working on a book together to help out married couples. That's one of the projects that we're doing, because we know that a lot of married couples out there are hurting and struggling. And even though they may look great on the outside, we know that a lot of them are broken and going through a lot of different things. So we wanted to be that little beacon of light, in the marriage space, to help that demographic of people to just succeed and excel in their marriage, right? Not only survive marriage, but thrive marriage. So we're writing that book right now. It's called What Real Love Looks Like. That should be dropping later on this year. But I'm also, I also have a book writing masterclass that I'm working on that's actually out right now, and a couple masterminds. And, right now the speaking is on pause. So a couple of the events and gigs that I had, they had to get postponed or canceled because of this coronavirus that we're all dealing with. And other than that, man, I'm just, pedal to the metal, moving forward, man.
So tell us a couple of insights on your book around the relationship, because I think it's fitting today. People are at home now with families. And I know some of the people on my team, they're trying to do their job. They got 3 kids at home. People are on top of each other. So what are some of the things you talk about in your book? Give us a sneak preview on some of the tips and tricks.
Awesome, man. Well, one of the things we're talking about, obviously we're talking about some of the basics like communication. One of the main things we're talking about also is, intercourse and intimacy and sex, which is almost like a taboo thing not to talk about in public too much, but we talk about that as well. One of the cool things that I really like that we're going to be talking about is about authentic love, right? Authentic love, not just love, but authentic love. And I give an example in the book about how a lot of times we're with someone for so long, or maybe not even so long, but we just tend to go on autopilot with some of the things that we say. Like we may come home from work and say, "How was your day?" automatically by habit. And then your spouse is speaking to you, whether it's husband or wife, and they're speaking to you, and you're not really in the moment. You're not really present. You're not really thinking. You just ask that question because, we've kind of been trained that that's the right thing to do when you get home, right? Like, "Hey, how was your day?" But I talk about being, in the moment, being present and actively listening. So when you ask that question, like, be present, be in the moment, engage with your spouse. And also another example I gave is like when you're leaving the house, you'll say something like, "Hey, babe, I love you. I'll see you in a little bit." And you just walk out the house.
Love you.
But yeah, it's kind of like, "I love you." And it's like, you do it, but you're like on autopilot. And I talk about, instead of doing that, maybe taking a moment and then actually going to your spouse and saying, "Hey, babe, I love you," and giving them a hug and a kiss real quick, something quick, and then keep it moving, but actually showing that authentic love, not just saying it, but actually showing it through action. Because I believe that love is an action word, not just a noun or a verb. It's actually a verb, an action word. So yeah.
Yeah. So being intentional about it, purposeful about it, and really being present to it. I love that. And we can all do with that reminder. And I think the coronavirus is actually doing that for us, because there's so many things that are off the menu for things to do. It's allowing a lot of people to become grounded and more connected, hopefully anyway. So let's talk about, how you grow up and you're in a wheelchair and there's certain things you can't do. And you have an amazing attitude on the things that you're capable of doing, and you focus on that. Tell us a little bit about the history there that got you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. So I'm a city boy. Had a great childhood. Come from a pretty great, pretty decent family. Little dysfunctional, but right, who doesn't come from a dysfunctional to some level extent, right? But I was born with a neuromuscular condition called spinal muscular atrophy, and what that condition does basically is the older I get, the weaker my muscles get. And the doctors had said that by the age of 15, I would end up in a wheelchair, and they weren't even expecting me to live past my teenage years. And so, but I have good news for everyone that's listening and watching, because this year, actually last month on February the 25th, I just celebrated my 43rd birthday, man.
You do not look 43, my man.
And you know why, man? It's because I'm always smiling. And they say that smiling and laughter keeps you looking young, keeps you feeling young. And so that's like one of my secret sauces, man. Just when life comes at you with a curveball, just smile, man, and keep moving forward and keep moving forward. But I've been blessed, man. 43 years old, after being told they weren't expecting me to live past my teenage years. And I'm just excited, for life. That's why I have that pizzazz that you spoke about earlier, and that excitement, because every single day that I wake up and I'm alive is enough for me to be having an attitude of gratitude and thankful that I'm still alive, after being told that I, shouldn't be here after the age of 19. And, but it started really getting a little difficult for me. And I really started seeing a shifting in my body when I was in high school. And that's a really tough time to be in, because in high school, that's when, you're trying to kind of figure out who you are, who you want to be, who you want to become. And so, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking about college or having a career. I was just in survival mode. I was just trying to live up to 19 or even past 19 years old. And so that was a tough time for me. That was one of the most toughest times that I've had to go through, was my later high school years, like around a junior and senior years of high school, because that's when it started becoming difficult for me to sit and stand and go up and down the steps and just get dressed on my own, and just little basic life, movements that we all, some of us may even take for granted, right? That we don't even think about doing. That stuff started to get difficult for me. And I went through several years of my life just thinking and having that negative, toxic mindset that I would never be able to do anything great, that I would never amount to anything, that I would never do anything of significance, that I would never be able to leave that mark, right? That legacy that we all deep down want to leave on this planet when we leave. And I thought that my story was just going to be living and dying in a wheelchair and really not doing anything great in life. And that was a story I was telling myself for so many years. I felt useless. I felt worthless. I felt, incapable, inadequate. And it wasn't until I got into my late 20s, early 30s, where the mindset shift really kicked in. And it was like, okay, Jose, you can't lift your arms anymore. You can't do this. You can't do that. I was focusing so many years on the things that I couldn't do. And I said, okay, well, stop feeling sorry for yourself. And what can you do, Jose? Like, I literally had these conversations in my mind. Like, what can you do? It's like tighten up already and get your act together.
How did you pay the bills during your 20s? If were you capable of working physically, or what did you do?
Yeah. I actually have an over 20 year in a corporate America background. So I worked in corporate America, started from the bottom up and worked all the way to supervisor position, managerial positions. I worked in the hospitality industry for 10 years, and then I worked for another 8 years in the energy industry, dealing with wholesale electricity. And so I have, a ton of experience and expertise in, customer service, sales, retention, anything that has to do with corporate America, employ. And the funny thing is that now, all these years later, corporations hire me and bring me in to, speak to their teams on diversity and inclusion and employee engagement and company culture and how to make the shift and mindset and all these type of different things. And so it's funny how, life has a way of turning itself around when you really go after it and attack it. And, but that comes from learning who you are, being confident in who you are and going through the process, man. I'm a really big fan about going through the process. And for me, I like to tell a lot of people, I was forced to go through the process. I didn't have a choice, to not be in this wheelchair, right? It's just something that I was forced to deal with. But going through these years of life, Brock, and learning about the process and going through the process and embracing to you, it's going through a process of decreasing in mobility. And every time that I go through a different shifting, I have to learn I've trained my brain to learn how to adapt and adjust and figure new things out. Because every time there's a new shift and decreasing, I have to figure out new ways to do things. I have to figure out new ways to get around obstacles and challenges and adversity that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. So my mind is constantly in a state of renewal, constantly in a state of adapting, and constantly in a state of adjusting to the different lifestyle that I have to live on a constant basis.
Let's talk about that for a while, because I find that very fascinating for what we're going through. Is a lot of people are trying to control the outside world because they're afraid of what's happening. And what I like about what you said is that you're in a constant state of renewal, a constant state of adapting, understanding that things are going to change, and understanding that there may be things that you can no longer do, or things that are going to be more difficult to do. How do you stay empowered and optimistic and excited and positive and all that, knowing that there's a bit of a diminishing effect happening, at least on a physical level?
Well, it's because it's one thing to understand the change, but there's another thing to know that the change is coming, right? Like this whole coronavirus, like nobody really knew it was coming, right?
Right.
But for me, I know that at some point, another change is going to happen. And so I've been able to develop that mindset, that mental toughness, that mental resilience to know that when that next storm comes, I'm going to have to deal with it. And the way I deal with it is through my attitude, through positive, PMA, positive mental attitude, having an attitude of gratitude and being grateful for the things that I have in life. Because like I said, I went for so many years focusing on the things I couldn't do and focusing on the things that I didn't have. And now I am so grateful, Rock, man, for just the smallest, simplest things in life, man. I wake up and I just take a deep breath and I'm like, God, I'm thankful that I'm able to breathe on my own. Because there's some people, especially dealing with this coronavirus, like that's what it does.
Yes.
It attacks your lungs and it clogs you up, and that's what's killing people. They can't breathe. And so the fact that I'm still able to breathe on my own and I don't have to wear a mask or be on a ventilator or one of those type of contraptions, and I'm able to do it on my own, man, that just gets me excited, and I'm grateful, man. And I'm thankful. I'm like, man, there's people out there that can't have this. And here I am, I have it. And, I do it on my own. And it just feels great, man. Just breathing in, and just even something as small as that. It may sound like kind of ridiculous, but to me, it's a big deal, man.
I really like that. So let's take that metaphor a little bit further. So you said that things are going to change. That things might become more difficult. So you're in constant preparation. Yes?
Yes.
And we know, based on history, that there are going to be recessions. People talk about every 7 to 10 years, there's a recession. It's happened as long as history's been around. There's something that comes out. Yet people seem to be in denial around that. They're almost like, no, this is going to go on forever. And then when it happens, people are like shocked. Oh my God, the economy is going to be tough for now. What do I do? What if people embraced your attitude? They're like, you know what? Every day I get up, I'm preparing myself to be a better version of myself for a bigger obstacle. I might not know what it is, but I'm going to prepare myself to be better so that when something comes along mentally, emotionally, financially, I'm in a better position. What if that was life was the gymnasium for them? So that being said, you use gratitude as one of your weapons. What else do you use in order to give rituals and routines that enable you to get up and feel really great about your day?
Yeah, man, I'm a big believer in affirmations. Affirmations work for me. I'm a big believer in perspective. I'm always looking at perspectives. Even if I'm not in agreement with someone on whatever topic we're talking about, I'm always trying to think about their perspective.
So you're open.
Yeah, I'm open. That's how I'm open-minded, exactly. And so, attitude, positivity, affirmations, and open-mindedness are the things that help me. And I'm constantly in a state of learning and growing, man. I'm always reading articles. I'm always doing research. I'm always looking things up because I want to be informed, especially with my condition. There's different trials that are out there right now. And, I always said, I'm just me personally, I've just always been that type that I don't want to be a guinea pig for any of that stuff because it could be great, but it can not be not so great. Right. So I always say like, well, I'll wait till, the phases go through, and it's almost like buying a new cell phone, right? When the new cell phone comes out, they say, don't buy it right away because it's still sometimes working out through some kinks. So I'm like that with the trials. Right. But I'm always I'm looking into that, seeing what new trials are out, what benefits there are, how it's affecting people, what the side effects are. And I kind of apply that whole thing into life in general. Like anything I'm diving into or anything I'm interested about, I want to look at facts. I want to look at some research. I want to look at some statistics, and I want to be informed. I want to be well informed. So when I know that when the future arrives and the next storm in my life per se is going to hit, I know that I'm going to be able to weather the storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. We have a question here, but before we get to that, when this whole coronavirus came out, one of the things that I asked myself is, in any situation of adversity, what's great about this? And I look for what the opportunity is, because in every problem, there is an opportunity. I was listening to Jim Cramer, I think it is, and he talked about this 10 stocks that are going to do really well based on home-based businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not a financial advisor or a stock advisor. I can't give that advice, but I took his information because I'm like you, curious. And I spoke to people that were listening to me in my tribe and on Facebook Live, and I recommended the stock that everybody's becoming very familiar with called Zoom. And I said, here's what I learned, and I think it might be a good investment. At the time, it was at $105. Do you know what it's at today?
What is it?
$155.
Wow.
So it's a 50% increase in about 10 days.
And it's going to grow. It's going to continue to grow.
Right. So I don't say that because people should have, although it would be nice if you bought it. I say it because I believe my perspective, to use your words, is that amongst all adversity, trials, tribulations, negativity, those people that are paying attention are going to find the gold buried within all the dirt. And there's one example. When do you get a 50% return in 10 days?
That's right.
So the question is, what steps did you take to begin expanding your attitude of gratitude? Because gratitude is a muscle, yes?
Absolutely. I'm always talking about training the brain. So it's like we can't control a lot of things in life, but there's certain things that we can't control. And some of the things that we can control is we can control what we think, we can control what we believe, and we can control what we speak. And I'm a firm believer that there's power in our words. And so that's why affirmations are important for me. Affirmations is one of the main top 3 things that help me expand an attitude of gratitude and just being in a constant state of thanksgiving. I was speaking for this corporation one time, and excuse me, one of the things that really impressed me about the company was that while I was walking around the organization, they had a team huddle. And before they even did anything in the huddle, they did a 90-second moment of gratitude where everyone just closed their eyes. They played some like meditation music, and everybody for 90 seconds just was in a state of gratitude. And no one was saying anything, but the energy in their rock was absolutely amazing. And I was like, wow, that's so awesome. And so I started incorporating that in my daily life. Like every single morning when I wake up, I actually do it for more than 90 seconds. I probably do it for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I just start naming things out loud that I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for my home. I'm thankful for my health, because outside of the condition that I have, which is non-life threatening, by the way, for those of you guys that are listening, it's non-life threatening. So other than that, I have a clean bill of health, no cholesterol, no high sugar, no blood pressure, none of those type of things. So I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for my vision. I'm thankful for all my senses. I'm thankful for my wife and my children, my home. I'm thankful for my car because I drive my own car, And so just when you start just being thankful, right? and entering into that space of gratitude, it does something to your chemical makeup, right? You start releasing endorphins, you start releasing oxytocin, you start to shut off the cortisol chemicals that are released in your body, which is the stress levels, right? So that's very important. And the body is a phenomenal thing, man. And one of the things that I've liked, like I said, I like to study is the body because it's so intriguing, and it has a way of healing itself, has a way of, changing your emotion, right? And we can control that. We can control our emotions, right? And so that's just some of the ways that I've been able to expand my gratitude, is just by naming out loud the things that I'm thankful for and that I'm grateful for. And that just automatically shifts the atmosphere.
That's amazing. Now, you talked about your book with your lady, and you talked about, intercourse in that. And I always tease people who come out with these like Hal Elrod, The Miracle Morning, and people that have they go to bed at like Mike, Tom Bilyeu goes to bed at 9 o'clock, gets up at 4. And I'm like, nobody ever talks about when they're intimate in these rituals. And there's got to be some time if you're getting up at 4 and your lady isn't. So for you, is it something, because some people will, they'll like, it's spontaneous. Is it something you're intentional about? Is something you guys schedule? And I know this is kind of an offbeat topic, but I think it's worthy based on the fact that we're now stuck in our homes. How do people get around that conversation?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question, because like I said, most people don't like to talk about those type of topics out loud or in public. I love them, to be honest with you, because I'm just an authentic, transparent individual. But, and just for your listeners out there and your audience, I can still feel everything, because that's like a question on a lot of people's mind. Like, he's in a wheelchair, does his motor still rev, and does he still have fire in the exhaust system? And so just to put it out there, I can still feel and move everything. It weakens my muscles, and so yes, everything is working fine. My wife and I have 2 children together that we bore naturally, the old fashioned way, right? But my wife and I, man, it's a mix. I think it's a mix of the combination of what you mentioned. Sometimes it's scheduled, sometimes it's spontaneous. And one of the things that we even wrote about in the book is that when we both worked in corporate America, we used to have this thing that we would do like 3 to 4 times a year. We would try to do it anyhow. And we would have what's called a sex day. It would be a sex day where we would go to work, and we would just kind of like be texting each other some stuff. And we'd just be like, hey, you want to just, call out of work and just meet up at the house? And we would say, heck yeah, let's go. And we would just, because like I said, I can drive. So I drive in hand control. So she'd be at her job, I'd be at my job. We'd go back home and we'd have a sex day, man. It'd be so fun. Like, we'd make love. We'd go catch something to eat, come back, do it again, watch a movie, have dinner, come back, do it. So it's like, we always try to break the last record. And I think for us, I think it was like 5 times in one day was our max.
Virtual high five.
High five, man. Yeah, man. So, I think that, having, sexual relations, healthy sexual relationships, relations in a marriage is very, very important, because I think that, that's one of the reasons why, people step outside of the marriages, because the lack of attention, the lack of intimacy, the lack of oneness, and the lack of sex. And so I think that once, and again, it's like sometimes for different people, different things happen, but I think it goes back to that little rat race where it's like, well, if you're not doing this for me, I'm not going to do that for you. And if she's not doing this, I'm not doing, and then you kind of get stuck in that. And next thing you know, we have friends and people that we speak to all the time about the topic. And man, we met one person that said that they had sex like twice a year. I'm like, twice a year? How the heck can you survive like that, dude? And he was like, bro, I don't even know, man. I need help. I need advice. So I was like, yeah, man, I try to, kind of give them some, some mentorship advice on what works for us and things like that. But yeah, man, we think sex is like it's a priority, man. I put a post out not too long ago on my social media, and it said, do you think sex should be a top priority in a marriage? And you should see the comments, man, and read the comments. It's so funny, man. one lady said, "Oh man, I forgot," and she looked like an older lady, but so it was, it was funny. But the comments are hilarious. But I think that it's a top, and you hear people saying like it's not the top priority, but it's a top priority. And I worded the question carefully because I didn't want people to think that it was the top priority, because I don't think that sex is the top priority, right? Because there's some people that are deficient in that area, right? But I think that it is a top priority.
Well, Dr. Oz said that with the coronavirus, just stay home and have sex.
If you don't have kids, then yeah, rock the house. If you have kids, it might be a little difficult. You might have to put the Netflix on real loud and lock the door or something like
Rock the bathroom.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So again, I want to remind you, if you have any questions for Jose, please feel free to throw them our way. I'm sure he's happy to answer some from the field. And during these difficult times, you can see that his attitude is still light and fluffy. Let me ask you this. Have you had anybody that you know, anybody on your team, anybody close to you that has been infected by the virus?
No, I haven't, not personally. However, the church that I go to, right next door is a nursing home. And there was 3 people I'm from South Florida. There was 3 people in that nursing home who have since passed away from the coronavirus at that nursing home. So it was a little kind of close to home, not in home, but really close to home. So I was like, wow. So yeah, man, not personally, but again, a nursing home, they're elderly people, probably weak immune systems. So that, we have to be careful, man. We have to be vigilant and be careful.
Now, it takes you a considerable time, I imagine, to get prepared in the morning, get through your morning routine longer than most people. Yet you have achieved so much for your 42 and a half, 43 years on the planet. How do you get your head around, like, I have to do more than, say, this other person and still feel like you can achieve as much? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, one of the things for me is because of the fact that what you just said, I have to go through a couple of extra steps than the normal person, excuse me, I wake up a little earlier. I have to wake up a little earlier, or whatever we have going on. We always have to plan a little earlier to be able to do things, right? And so for me, and for those of you actually that are interested, there's a really cool video on my website. Right when you log on, you can just go to joseinspires.com. There's a cool video. And I give people a sneak peek into the life of what we have to go through on a daily basis. So it shows my wife helping me get dressed in the bed and how she has to literally bear hug me and pick me up and put me
in frozen. I don't know if you guys are frozen or if I'm frozen. But if you are listening, stand by. I'm sure.
I'm still live. I don't know if they can hear me. It looks like you froze up on my end.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're back.
Now.
Yeah. So, for me, when you go on the website, you can see that video of my wife getting me dressed, bear hugging me, putting me in the wheelchair. And then, her having to continue to finish getting me dressed, putting my shirt on and things like that. And there was a time in my life where I was just super embarrassed or ashamed to even talk about it or let people inside of me. But, again, going through the process and building that confidence and building that boldness and that courageousness, that helped me to put that video out there, because I know a lot of times, my wife and I will show up to different places and we're smiling, great personality, great attitudes, looking good, feeling good. But people don't really know what we have to do to just show up for that moment, for that event, right? Just to show up for life. And so it's a process, man. And again, it's just going through the process. So yeah, if you want to check out that video, you can see it. It's a really cool video. I'm pretty sure you'll be inspired by it if you want to go and check that out when you get a chance.
What's one of the hardest things you've had to overcome? Were you bullied? Did you ever get fired? Did you ever get bankrupt? Like, what are some of the toughest things you've had to overcome?
Well, thank God I've never been bullied. I mean, people have tried to bully me, but like I said, I was born in the Bronx, New York. So I'm a pretty tough cookie. And when I was younger, I was still able to, I was still strong and quick, and I was able to move around. So I was able to handle my own. But, I was, people did try to attempt to bully me. And then once they realized that, I wasn't that type of individual that was just going to let that happen, then it kind of like just faded away. But I also had a good group of friends, man, that were, that were like very protective of me, that really had my back, that didn't let anybody try to come at me like that crazy. And they really stood up for me. And I'm so grateful for that, because I think that if there was more friends like that out there in the world, there would be less bullying going on, right? And
Yes.
so I didn't deal with the bullying, but one of the things that I did have to overcome for me, and if I can just be 100% transparent, was when I was in corporate America, man, I just felt like I was reaching a lid, like I was able to make it to supervisor and managerial positions, but I felt like I couldn't make it past that. And it was because I firmly believe that it was because I didn't have a college degree. A lot of times the positions want a college degree, and I didn't have that, but I had a ton of experience. And then I even think sometimes maybe the wheelchair might have been a little factor also. But that used to really frustrate me, man, in the beginning when I was early in my career. And I was like, man, why does this keep happening to me? Like, I have a ton of experience. I'm a hard worker. I outwork most of the people that are physically able, doing the same thing I'm doing. My scores are high. My productivity is high. My quality is high. Like, why is this happening? And, I never really found out why, right? But what I started to do was, again, training the brain. I'm like, hey, well, you know what? If I can't get past this limit, I'm going to just keep working my butt off until they recognize me, right? Because I remember one of my mentors said, one of my mentors, Willie Jolly, for those of you who may not know who he is, very known motivational speaker out there. When he was coming up, he was speaking on the same stage as Les Brown and Zig Ziglar. Those were his two mentors. And he took a picture with them, and somebody saw that picture and said, oh, wow, those are my three favorite speakers. And he thought, wow, you're including me in that statement. And he felt he was like a little dog, right? He was like, man, I felt like I was the little dog in the picture. Here you have Les Brown and Zig Ziglar, and here I am, I'm like the little dog. And he said that he learned that if the little dog barks long enough and loud enough, the big dogs will start to pay attention. And that really resonated with me, because I've always felt like the underdog, right? The little dog, the underdog. I like to call it the underdog, because a lot of my years in my life, Rock, I always felt like I had to prove myself to people, because I guess there's a certain stigmatism with people who have physical disabilities that probably also have mental disabilities as well, and may not be capable of doing a job like an able-bodied person may be able to do it. And so I always felt like I had to prove myself to people. And even nowadays, like, I don't feel like I have to prove myself to anyone, because I felt like I've already, worked my butt off and shown. I don't have to prove it, because I show up for myself every day. I show up for life, and I work harder than most people, right? Even in my condition. So I let my work and my work ethic talk for me, right? It speaks for me, right? It defends me. I don't have to brag about it, because it shows up in what I do. And so, but with that being said, like I said, I felt like I always had to prove myself to people. And I think that was a little, another thing that I had to overcome as well. Like, stop trying to live for other people and live for myself. And not that I'm not living for other people, because when people ask me what's my why, I have two whys. My wife and my children is my first why, and then other people is my second why, because I know that there's other people out there that are struggling with whatever their struggles look like, right? My struggle is physical, is visible, you can see it, but there's so many other wheelchairs, quote unquote wheelchairs, that are out there that you can't see. So I'm always asking people, I say, this is my wheelchair, but what does your wheelchair look like? And
That's really powerful.
yeah.
That's beautiful. We got a bunch of questions here. Let me run through them. Britt says, what has been your biggest influence that's given you such a genuine positive attitude?
Can you ask that question again?
What has been the biggest influence that has given you a genuine positive attitude?
I think that's one of the gifts that I was born with. We're all born with unique gifts, right? And since I was a little kid, man, I've always been a positive, outgoing, the cup is, half full type of guy. And I think that that's just a gift that I was born with, and I utilized it throughout my whole life. Like, even when I was younger, and I knew that I had this condition in me, but I didn't think of myself as being disabled because it wasn't visible yet. I was that guy always helping other people who needed help. Like, I remember there was a guy in my neighborhood, an older guy who was, I think he was in Vietnam, and he only had one leg. And I would see him in a manual wheelchair with his groceries, and he would be pushing himself with one leg and with one arm and holding his groceries in the other arm. And every time I saw him, man, I would run up to him. His name was Chuck. I would run up to him and I'd push him all the way to his house. He lived like about 2 blocks away from where I lived. And I'd push him over to his house. And sometimes he'd give me a couple quarters. And sometimes he'd give me a comic book. And I said, I don't need that, man. I just want to help you out. And, he was like, no, hey, I want to give it to you. But, so I thought it was cool. But I've always been that helping, outgoing type of individual, that serving others type of individual.
Beautiful. You exercise that muscle, of course.
Yeah.
Tyler Reynolds says you spoke about at some point you decided to stop feeling sorry for yourself. And throughout speaking engagements or corporate events, I'm sure you've encountered others who feel sorry for themselves. How do you help people recognize and counter this?
Well, so I'll start asking, and that's a great question, by the way, man. And I appreciate that question. I'll start asking people a series of questions to dig a little deep. So I'll ask them like, where do you come from? I ask them like a couple of personal questions just to kind of get a feeling of their background, because a lot of times it's our backgrounds and our upbringing that'll have us growing up into an adulthood that'll keep us from living our lives to the fullest. So I'll ask them some personal questions about their upbringing, their background, what kind of family did they come from? What kind of neighborhood did they live in? What kind of culture do they come from? And dig a little deep and, extract some answers. And then I'll start asking them like, well, what do you love doing? Like, what makes you happy? What are you passionate about? What brings you joy? Like if money wasn't an issue, what would you do every single day of your life? And then I'll start getting those answers and I'll just start giving them some nuggets based off of their answers of the questions that I ask them. So I like to help people, for your listeners out there, I coined myself the mindset disruptor because I like to disrupt people's normal ways of thinking and get them thinking outside of the box and outside of themselves. Because sometimes we get so stuck in our head that we're not ready to receive new information, right, about ourselves, because we've been programmed for so long. Sometimes it's outside programming and sometimes it's self-programming of the story. Like I said earlier, the story that I was telling myself about not being able to do anything great, and then it wasn't until I came across Les Brown who said, you have something special, you have greatness in you, that kind of helped change my life around too as well. Right. And so that's some of the things that I'll do. I'll ask some questions, dig a little deep, get some answers, and then I'll start giving some coaching and some tips that they can use as far as, affirmations and just really digging deep within themselves and building up that courage and that boldness to be able to step outside of their comfort zone.
How can people get in touch with you, follow you? Where should they go? What's the best place?
They can go anywhere at Jose Inspires. My website is joseinspires.com. All of my social media platforms are at Jose Inspires. And I'm active on all of them except for TikTok. I haven't really got my head around that one yet. But at Jose Inspires, I'm very engaging. I'm easy to get in touch with. So if anybody wanted to reach out to me for whatever reason, Jose Inspires on any platform, and joseinspires.com is the website.
Awesome. So now, if people have this propensity to be worried or fearful during this coronavirus deal, what are some simple things you think can help people maybe get just through that next day as they're, anxious?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that I would tell people to do right away is start asking yourself, what can you do to help the situation? What can you do to help others? Maybe your neighbors or maybe family or friends. One of the things that I did personally is, since I'm able to drive my own van and I get in with a ramp and I drive with hand controls, I put a post up the other day saying that my wife and I were willing to drop off groceries and water to the elderly people who can't get out of their house, and to the people with special needs who can't get out of their house, to reach out to me. And if they lived in South Florida, within the tri-state county, my wife and I were willing to drive, either way, north or south, to help people out, man. And I think that once you start taking the focus off of yourself and your own fears and start thinking about how you can help the situation and other people, that's going to automatically relieve you from some of the stress and the fear, and start getting you active and activated in the community more. And one of the things that I noticed about this coronavirus, Rock, is that, and I hope that everybody has recognized this, is how many people are living in fear. A tremendous amount of people are living in fear. And we see it every single day with the lines at all the grocery stores, the hoarding of resources. And that's a sign and a symbolization of the fear factor. And there's so many people that are doing that. And like I said, if you can just focus on, like, get the focus off of yourself and the situation, and not so much the situation, right? Because the situation is there, but figuring out how you can contribute to the solution of the situation and how you can help people during the situation of crisis, that's going to help alleviate a lot of the fear and the stress that many people are dealing with.
Great point.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about it before, is what you focus on expands.
That's
and
right.
when you're focusing on all the news that's being sent at you, you start to feel bad because the statistics are there. That being said, you and I talked before we get live, there's 3,200 people that die daily with car accidents.
Yeah.
There are between 300 and 600,000 that die annually to the flu. So if we looked at those numbers every day and got all worried about it and fed our minds that programming, we would virtually be freaked out every day about everything.
Absolutely.
You know, HIV is still real. There's Ebola that's out there. I mean, there are all kinds of dengue. So what you focus on is really, it's important, I think, to take in the information and be wise, but don't make it more dramatic or more worse than it is. Just allow yourself to take it in and then take care of yourself and move forward. What would you add to that?
Yeah, 100%. You know, there's a lot of people out there right now, even with this, like how you just said, like, you know, there's AIDS out there and people are still having unprotected sex. You know, there's like you said, there's more people that died from car accidents than any other thing out there that's out there, and people are still driving, right?
Yes.
You know, so it's like, if you look at those statistics and there's people that are still driving and still having unprotected sex and any other thing that you look at, and people are still doing, then why would we live in such a state of fear? Like, that's a valid question to ask yourself. Like, if there's still things that are killing people out there and people are still doing them, then what makes this so different? Now, I get the whole quarantine and, you know, trying to flatten the curve. That makes 100% sense. And yes, we want to be able to help in those areas, but we can still do that without living in fear.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. 100%. And I think, you know, you take care of yourself. That's the first thing. Then you take care of the loved ones around you. Then you take care and you reach out and maybe you take some groceries for some older people, et cetera. Always being intelligent, washing your hands and doing that sort of thing. But, you know, how do you overall, and let's end up today on this, is how do you overall prep for adversity?
Man, I don't think that the normal person would, you know, they can prep to a certain extent. Me, being the lifestyle that I've had to live and always being in a constant state of prepping or being prepared. You know how they say, right? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right?
Yes.
And you know, there's another one that says it's always better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than have an opportunity and not be prepared, right? That was Whitney Young Jr. who said that quote. So, you know, I just think that it's, you know, have that forward thinking, have that future thinking, and know that there's storms that are going to come, but know that the storms are going to come and pass. And when they come, how are you going to deal with them? Like, it's a valid question for you to ask yourself. If this storm comes in, if any storm comes into my life, how am I going to deal with it? Right. And I think sometimes two things can happen. You can play a scenario out in your head and it frighten you so much that you live in fear, or you can play a scenario out in your head and conquer that scenario, figure out a way in your mind to conquer that scenario. And if that scenario presents itself, now you've already created a game plan to overcome it. And that's what happens to me a lot. I'm always forward thinking. So I'm like, man, if my arm starts to give out on me, how am I going to be able to move this joystick on, you know, to move my wheelchair around? And I literally start thinking about it. I start thinking about different ways. Can I tie my hand around it? I start Googling different contraptions for people who move around with wheelchairs with limited arm use. And I'm just like looking for the solution. And if I can't find a solution, I'll create a solution, Rock. I'll create a solution. There's been many of times where I've actually had to create a solution in order for me to be able to be as independent as I possibly can.
So basically what you're saying is the ultimate confidence is not knowing how to do it, but knowing that you'll find a way and having that resolve within yourself to employ your efforts and to continue to be open and curious so that you will find the way to succeed and overcome any adversity.
Yeah, man, I'm 100% all in with the where there's a will, there's a way. If you have a willingness to succeed, if you have a willingness to win, if you have a willingness to learn, if you have a willingness to grow, then you're going to get all that stuff. But if you're not willing, then you're not going to, achieve those things. One of the things that I saw one of the questions real quick that was there that said, there's a lot of people that often face with an adversity and their brain begins to create a story that allows them not to face that fear. Do you have any tips on how to begin changing your mindset to face that adversity? And what I would say is jump, man. Every single time you're faced with an adversity or fear, jump right into it. I remember one time that I was actually afraid of going jet skiing, right? I live in South Florida now. Everyone has a jet ski pretty much. Everybody's jet skiing. And I was like, man, that looks like so much fun. I would love to do that. But I was always afraid that if I fell off, how would I be able to manage myself? And one day, man, the opportunity presented itself for me to go jet skiing. And I said, you know what? I'm going in today. And I spoke to the guy. He rode on the back with me and have my life vest on. And I went jet skiing, man, Rock, I was doing 80 miles an hour on the ocean down at Key West. I have a video on my social media about it. If they look through my Facebook, they'll see, on my Instagram, they'll see a video that I did. Man, I felt so liberated and free that not only I overcame that fear, but I had a tremendous amount of fun, man. It was like one of the most fun moments in my life. And that was just like a year and a half ago that happened to me. So you're never too old or too young, man, to conquer a fear. That's why I say, man, when you're faced with an adversity, or fear, jump into it, man. Jump into it and conquer it. Figure out a way to conquer it. There's a way out there that you can overcome. You just have to figure out what that looks like for you and your situation.
And on that beautiful note, Jose, I want to thank you so much for spending time with our tribe and our bigger family on Facebook today. You are a source of inspiration, and honestly, you look like you're 25 or something like that. And you put that down to a great smile and lots of physical intimacy.
That's oh man, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Namaste. God bless. Stay healthy, stay well, and continue to help those people around you. And for the rest of you that are out there, the same thing. Stay well, practice your gratitude. And remember that if I can do it and Jose can do it, then you can do it too.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. God bless everyone.
All right. Good night. God bless.
Take care.